Hello.
Hello.
Oh, hello. Today is Sunday, the 17th of April, 2016. And you've been in the embassy since Tuesday, the 5th of April. Is that true?
Yes.
How do you feel about still being in the embassy, the Zimbabwe embassy in London, instead of being in Zimbabwe? Manashi?
Um, it's disappointing. This is not the ideal circumstance to be moved from a secure hospital, or I've I've ended up here, and to still not be able to leave and to still be in the embassy in the UK shows things aren't really moving as I'd hoped it to. But I'm just trying to deal with it, putting all my efforts into dealing with that.
Okay.
I can just echo the same words because I had thought that by now we would be in Zimbabwe and we would actually be Skyping from Zimbabwe, Harare, instead of sitting here within the embassy. And yes, because we are still fugitives, treated as fugitives, we cannot go out. So basically, the environment for him has not changed that much because he's still not free to go out and do the normal things that he had wished he would be doing by now. So it's very disappointing.
Yeah. Would you like to briefly describe the room that you're living in?
Um, it's one of the rooms that is used by the embassy. It's not much. It's maybe 20 square meters. Yeah, that's the room that we are using right now.
Yeah, it's not appropriate, is it? Manashi, you were due in court on the 5th of April. What were the applications before the court on the 5th of April when you decided to run away?
Um, I only knew about I didn't know it was my application that I'd made was going to be heard that day. All I knew was that it was a hearing to discuss the level of contact between me and my mother. Um, Essentially, it was supposed to be about that and my application to discharge my care order.
Okay, that's two applications. So there was one application from the London Borough of Sutton to stop all contact with your mother and the rest of your family. Is that right?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. But were you aware that your C2 application that you gave to your mother to issue on your behalf was going to be heard that day too?
No, I wasn't given any legal documents prior to court. I was told that they're not sure if they can give me legal documents.
I don't know whether you realize that if I can just come in, because before he came to court, they done a mental capacity assessment and declared the doctor had issued a certificate to say he had mental capacity. But in talking to him, what I've realized is they had not actually given him any of the documents that he could have reviewed before going to court. So he was not aware of the actual contents of the contact restriction application which had been submitted. He only found out when I was talking to him that they actually wanted to cut off communication with him. They had not given him the details that they were going to cut off communication between him, me, and the rest of the family. They did not even disclose to him that his C2 application was going to be also considered in that hearing.
So basically, he was expected to turn up at court, but he didn't know what about.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
What he knows is what he has already said in the last video, I think, interview, where he said he was aware of the fact that there had been discussions around him being sent to live in Newcastle, about 6 hours away from London, in isolation, and he was aware of the fact that they were trying to cut off communication between him and the rest of the family completely.
Okay. Well, the C2 application that was issued in the court in the Royal Courts of Justice, that was done by you, Auxilia. But Manashi, was that C2 application done under your instructions?
Yeah, uh, I'm the one who gave in the statement to my mom to submit for me with the C2 application.
Okay.
Because what happened is we were during the Easter holidays. Initially, they'd said you could have a Section 17 leave. Then last minute they changed their mind. So I actually went to Norwich, rented a hotel and a car, and I went to see him a couple of days. And on those days, in the presence of one of the support workers, he gave me actually the instructions as to what he wanted me to put in his C2 applications. And he had told me that, okay, you can type it for me, come and show it to me, which I did, and he went through the application, so he was fully aware of what I typed for him.
Okay, so Manasseh, you've now seen the sealed application that your mother submitted on your behalf. Do you agree that it's exactly what you said you wanted your mother to do for you when you couldn't do it because you were in the hospital?
Yes, 100%.
Right, and that was to discharge the care order, yeah?
Yeah.
And for you and your mother to return to Zimbabwe by now, yeah?
As well as receive all of the documents from the court that they restricted my mom from having.
Yeah.
But I think maybe we should also mention that it was not just a discharging the interim care order and the document restriction order that had been submitted by his solicitor without his instructions, but also he had, I think, he restricted some of the statements that had been made, like the issue of when the passport on and jurisdiction in terms of whether he had two homes or one home before he arrived in the UK. But I'm sure he can explain that himself.
Yeah, can you explain the UK court keeps saying it's got jurisdiction, and the London Borough Sutton solicitor says the same thing. They say you weren't habitually resident anywhere when you were a tourist visiting London. What do you say about that jurisdiction situation that says that they've got authority over you because you didn't have a home anywhere?
I've been appalled by the statement since I first heard that they'd given themselves jurisdiction over my case. If I wasn't habitually resident in Switzerland, then I was definitely habitually resident in Zimbabwe, where we've had a home since 2013. So, I don't know how they came up with this decision, but it's a disaster. It shows the weakness of the high courts in the UK.
Yeah, it does show the weakness. But you also had a family group conference last September in which you agreed, did you not, to go back to Zimbabwe at that time?
Yeah, I did. It's not the first time that I've said I wanted to go back to Zimbabwe with my mom. I did agree to go to Zimbabwe. Actually, one day I'd come to the Zimbabwean embassy, but on my own, and I was told at the time that they couldn't help me. But I was definitely in the position that I wanted to go with my mom back to Zimbabwe.
And
I've said it before to the court, and obviously I'm still here, so nothing happened about it that time, and nothing happened about it this time as well.
Basically, did you say that you wanted to be a day pupil in Harare? Is that what you said in the group conference last year?
Yeah, that's what I said.
And how could you be a day pupil? Is that because the school that you wanted to go to is near your home?
Yes. There are nice schools in the area, and I just prefer to come home every day and see my mom and that, and then go back to school the next day, I guess.
You had a meeting on Friday, or that you didn't have a meeting, but there was a meeting on Friday in the Zimbabwe embassy. What can you tell us about the meeting that happened on Friday that you know about?
Originally we were told we can't tell you what happened in the meeting. I don't have the authorization. Then we were told nothing happened in the meeting. We had to keep pressing and pressing to get what actually happened in the meeting. And when we did get it, we were told that no representatives of the government came to the meeting. It was in fact just my social worker's manager, and his boss. That was disappointing to hear because they're fighting for our safe passage, and they've told me that the judge needs to give a nod to approve us going back to Zimbabwe together. And this I found disappointing because I know already what a disaster the judges are here. So we were told that my social worker and a psychiatrist were going to come and assess my mental health and my mental capacity. That's what came of the meeting, and also that, which was good actually, because I had been asking for this before, was to get to speak with the judge. The judge wanted to speak with me. Those are the two things that came out of the meeting.
So basically, when do they want to do a mental capacity assessment of you?
On Tuesday.
On
This
Tuesday.
coming Tuesday.
And then after they've given you a mental capacity assessment, they want you to speak to the judge. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you expect they're going to say about your mental capacity on Tuesday?
Go ahead.
Yeah, what I wanted to say is maybe to understand, just to go a few steps back, before they had this meeting on Friday. So between the 5th, when he ran away, and this meeting, last weekend on Saturday, social services had an they call it out of hours, made an out of hours application, I think it's called, and they were issued with a recovery order. So on Saturday, they got a recovery order. That means they were authorized to come and recover him from wherever he is, to take him back.
Hang on, Auxiliary. I think the recovery order was actually made on the 5th of April. That was the outcome of the hearing that Manasseh ran away from, was a recovery order to bring him back. And then a collections order was made.
A collections order, yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So on the 5th, there was a recovery order. And on the Saturday, there was a collections order. And I think the police also got search warranties because they've been going around searching the homes of his cousins. And in connection with the collections order, I think they also got another court order, which is a court date, which is the 12th of April. They were supposed to go back to court, right? So when we found out that there was supposed to be another hearing on the 12th, and we were aware of these recovery orders, Munashe prepared another statement, which he then submitted again to the court. And in this statement, he reiterated the facts that he has already said before, so that you understand. And I think the only other thing that I think we've missed out is the fact that his solicitor, the one he has already fired 3 times. They tried again to contact him to say, we hear what you are saying, we have seen your statements, but we are still not sure whether you really mean it. So we still want to have a video conference with you or face-to-face meeting with you at the embassy after hours if possible. But he rejected it. You can tell you how he responded to the lawyer's request.
Like my mom said, they said that one, they either don't believe it's me writing it, or they believe that I'm being coerced to write that to them. But anyways, I responded with a short 20-second clip to my solicitor, basically explaining to them, yes, it's really me, and I really don't want you to be my solicitor. Yeah, that's it.
But that went to Andrew, didn't it?
Yes.
Yes, it went to both Andrew and Gordon Reed.
Yeah, Andrew being your barrister.
Yes.
But if you believe that there is no jurisdiction, then should you comply with the demands of the London Borough of Sutton that you should have a mental health capacity assessment on Tuesday?
No, they have no right to put any demands on me. But the only thing I can say is about it feels like they still kind of have an upper hand, even without jurisdiction, because of the fact that we are in their host country and they they have the connections to the government and the police and all of that, to the doctors or whatever. Um, they do still have sort of an upper hand against us, but
Yeah, but
I don't feel
I,
the need to I don't feel the
I,
need to comply with any of their demands.
I think that's probably because your embassy doesn't understand the jurisdiction issue. Is that right?
Yeah, that's true. And they also refuse to inform themselves about my case. So that definitely worsens the situation.
I think the bottom line is he doesn't feel that he's in any way obligated to undergo this assessment. One, he's 16. Two, they said he has mental capacity, and there's a 16-year-old teen in the UK with mental capacity that has been proven. He has the right to say whether he wants to be assessed or not. But other than that, he's also saying if the UK does not have jurisdiction, then why in the first place should they even be talking about his mental capacity? So I think when I was talking to him, I said, you have said you want to go and talk to the judge, but what exactly do you want to go and tell the judge? Maybe he can tell you what he said, what his response was.
A big question would sit on my mind. Uh, how can you still think you're sane for you to say that I still need to be here? Um, I've told you about the abuse I've received since being here. After the court proceedings are over, I have no legal visa to stay here. I'm not going to apply for a visa to stay here because my plans are to leave. So how can it still be a sane idea that you can think back to yourself and think this is normal? We a plan for us is to keep him here against his will, as they are currently doing. What do you want from me? Why am I still here? Why do you want me to stay here? Uh, those are just some of the things I'd like to say to the judge on Tuesday.
Yeah,
and in terms of jurisdiction, do you think actually the judge is even qualified or even has the right to even make any demands on you?
No, he doesn't have the right to make any demands on me. I've removed the threshold, and the threshold, which is an important part of the case, what originally got me into the care or into court proceedings. And
what do you mean by that?
The alleged assaults which I was coerced into lying about to my social worker, that I've retracted and said that this was a lie, and that, as well as that, my own lawyer submitted the fact that I only had one home by himself, when in fact I had always said that I had another home in Zimbabwe. Should remove the jurisdiction for them to decide anything. I was here on a short on no one in my family, me, my mom, or anybody who was involved with me originally coming, had me staying here long term, as in longer than just a couple of days in London. So the fact that I'm here in the country should not on its own be the reason why should not on its own be the reason why they have jurisdiction to make these decisions about my life for me.
So basically, there's two situations. One, you're saying that they have no jurisdiction, and therefore the judges shouldn't be doing anything. And two, even if they say that they've got jurisdiction, there is no threshold. Is that right?
Yes. Mm.
And there is a website that these videos are going on to. Can you tell me what's been happening to that website since you went to the embassy on the 5th of April?
You mean the number of people who have viewed it?
Yeah.
I think it's now about more than 21,000 people have viewed it. The first video that we had.
Mm-hmm.
That means that, and we have had calls from people who are actually horrified and shocked by what's going on. We are getting the same question. Why does the UK want to hold on to this child, to your child? He's not a UK citizen. He was just a tourist. He has no residence permit for the UK. Why are they clinging on to this child when there are so many children who have been here for many years who came alone or with their parents? And one of the arguments they used was they are trying to say this child arrived here alone. And when they say that, they are trying to make it look like he was an abandoned child when he arrived in the UK. And yet that is not true, because before he came, arrangements had been made. I took him to the airport, and here he was welcomed by his cousin in Birmingham, and he stayed a few days with the cousin in Birmingham before I arrived. So there was not a single moment when you could say he was an abandoned child. But that's actually the argument they are trying to use to say he was an abandoned child.
What message do you both want to give to the Zimbabwean government?
When I went to visit him at the hospital in Norwich, I actually found out there was another 17-year-old girl, Zimbabwean girl in a similar situation. I have now found out that there are many Zimbabwean families who have actually lost their children. They've been taken away from them unfairly and given up for adoption. It's terrible, it's horrible what's happening here. And I'm hoping that, I think the reason why we have managed to fight with my son is because we have no resident status in this country. So we don't fear that, if we make noise and fight for our rights so that he can come back home to be reunited with the family, that we'll lose our papers. But the reality is, a lot of the families that I have spoken to, we have got British residence permit or British citizenship. They are afraid of speaking out about their kids who have been unfairly taken away from them because they fear that they will lose their papers. So a lot of them, I understand some of them have actually ended up in mental health hospitals. Some of them have committed suicide. Some of them are really suffering from depression. It's a pathetic situation. And the message that I would give, not just to the Zimbabwean government, but to other governments who have got families that are going through the same situation is, I think it's time that the government look at this issue seriously. Maybe they should consider having someone with a real legal background, not only in what's happening in terms of family law or child protection system in the UK, but also interjudicial child protection systems, so that at least they can understand and appreciate what's going on. This is really the peak of what's happening in the UK.
But in your case, do you think that your government in Zimbabwe should be focusing on jurisdiction?
Yeah, I think this is what they should be focusing on, because this is really the crux of the matter. Because as long as it is clear, right, that the UK has no jurisdiction, which is really the case here, because jurisdiction, the reason how they stole Zimbabwean jurisdiction is they went and said and declared that my child was of no fixed abode. He had no residence when he arrived in the UK as a tourist. So basically what they are saying is if you have been living in one country, right, and at some point you decide for whatever reason to relocate to another country, while you are relocating, if you pass through the UK as a tourist in transit, at that particular moment, you have no residential status. So for that reason, they can have jurisdiction. But in our case, we have had two homes because I bought a property in 2013 in Zimbabwe. I submitted the documents in court with photos of my son with the agreement of sale for my property from 2013. Photos of my son and myself as we were building our property. My son spent 1 year in a boarding school in Zimbabwe between 2013 in July and 2014. During that time, when he was on holiday, he spent that time in the home in Zimbabwe. Part of his belongings were there, part of his belongings were in Switzerland. December 2015, we went and spent 2014 and January 2015, we spent Christmas in our family home. So there is no way that they could, and all this year's evidence has been produced to the court, but they still went ahead and said, we do not have tangible evidence that when you decided to uproot yourself from Switzerland and relocate to Zimbabwe, that at that particular moment, you had another home. So we just assume the moment he got on the plane to Birmingham, he lost his residence. So that's the reason why we can justify having jurisdiction for this child. I think also, not just for my government, but even for the other parents who are listening, I think this is a lesson for them, because what it basically means is you can never really feel safe with your child if you are passing through the UK, because it means they can snatch your child anytime. If the child just comes and says, you know what, my mom is scratching me, or my mom is doing that, or I just don't want to go and live with my mom in Japan or wherever I want to go. I think it is what is happening in court has got far-reaching implications than the people really understand. Because on the other hand, if I am a parent from Afghanistan or Syria or wherever there is a war, or I feel, you know, I can't make ends meet even in Zimbabwe, all I have to do is to scramble and get some money to pay for tickets. I take my 3 children with me to the UK, and in the airport, I can just let them go loose and say, you know, just go and say I'm being abused by my parents. That's it. Then they take them, then you know they are going to put them in the system. One would have to weigh as a parent to say what is better, to have them in the system being abused, or to have them in Africa or somewhere in a war zone area. I don't know. But basically, even the British people should be asking themselves, is that really what we want to be happening with our taxpayers' money? That it's being spent on people who we have no valid reason to be here, like my son. He comes from an affluent family background. He was in a private school where we were paying about $3,000 per month, simply because he still wanted to go back to Switzerland, right? I tried to grab his passport away from him. The passport got torn in the process, and they told him, you know, you can lie and say, you know, she also kicked me when she was trying to take my passport from me. That's how they got him into care. It's amazing what's happening here.
It is totally amazing. So basically,
why my son is in care. Can you imagine that? Simply because he still wanted to go back to Switzerland, I tried to grab his passport to prevent him from absconding. The passport got torn, right? And they coerced him to say, you know, just say it's not just the passport that got. Oh, I was emotionally and physically abused. He was emotionally abused because the passport got torn. He was physically abused because they claim I kicked him. And that's how he got into care. But what is it that they've done up to now? I am supposed to have torn the passport and kicked him, assuming I actually kicked him. If you compare that with what has happened to him since then, he has been attacked and stabbed, right? He had to undergo surgery. His drink was spiked, and he alleged he could have been assaulted. We don't know because they blocked all medical examinations to try to figure out whether anything happened until now. And now he went on a strike because he didn't want to eat anymore, because he had realized they were just abusing him and he wanted to get out. What did they do? Instead of listening to him, they put him in a mental health hospital. Then he got the opportunity to run away. He ran away, and now they're after him again. I just don't get it.
So basically, as there's a jurisdiction problem, i.e. that the British courts and the London Borough of Sutton have got no jurisdiction, your government should be talking to the British government about jurisdiction and saying there is no jurisdiction, so please release our citizens. Is that right?
Yeah, but I think I understand why they are trying not to go that route, because the minute, what I'm saying is, maybe what my son did not mention is the fact that the people who came to have this meeting with them, they also had their legal team as part of the delegation. So the lawyer who is handling this case from the side of the UK authorities, and I think her boss also attended the meeting. They are trying to steer the negotiations in the direction that they will end up saying, let's assess the child and see whether he has mental capacity or not. If he agrees, we all know that they are just going to say he has no capacity. Then they will say, you know what, he's under Section 3. There is no way we can release him. So he has to go back to the mental health hospital. The reason why they are doing all this, we know, is not really because they want to keep my son. There is no benefit whatsoever. I think that's one of the questions my son could even ask the judge. Can you tell me one single benefit that I tend to enjoy if I stay here in the UK? It's because they are trying to avoid financial litigation because of their failure to exercise duty of care because of what happened to him in care. So they are afraid maybe we might go and sue them, and that's why they are trying to hold on to him by all means necessary. But our government has to understand, as far as jurisdiction is concerned, the UK, based on the statements that my son has submitted before the court, and he is willing actually to state the same thing to the judge, right? They have no jurisdiction.
But the London Borough of Sutton are not the British government. And I think that in your situation, your government should be dealing with the UK government, not the London Borough of Sutton. The London Borough of Sutton are definitely not agents of the British government.
Yeah, you know what? When we were told there were going to be government-to-government negotiations, we thought it was going to be foreign affairs and foreign affairs, or government and government. So we were actually appalled and surprised when we found out that the team that came actually to do the negotiations here are the same people that we have been seeing in court. We have been actually abusing my son, and who are actually not following the rules. So we don't see how we can actually get anywhere. In fact, now it's like we just moved the court proceedings from the actual court to the embassy. And it defeats the purpose of why we came to the embassy, because if we wanted to continue with the court proceedings that we have lost faith in, then we would have continued that route. But the reason why my son ran away is because he realized even if he were to go there to court, right, he was going to lose. It was already clear they had already made up their minds. They wanted to cut off contact completely between him and the rest of the family. They wanted to send him to Newcastle, far 6 or 7 hours away from London, where he has his cousins. So why would he want to go that route? He ran away and came here. But now they are trying to shift the whole team of the people handling his case in court to the Zimbabwean embassy. Since when, I'm asking myself, since when does an embassy, right, allow the UK authorities to enter their embassy, their premises, and start doing some assessments like that when the issue of jurisdiction is being disputed? That's what we don't understand. Why is that happening?
So basically, it looks like the London Borough of Sutton requested a meeting at the embassy to try and persuade them that they had jurisdiction and that they should get the help of the Zimbabwe embassy to for all compensation claims and against themselves. That's what it looks like to me.
Yeah, exactly. That's how it looks like. So they are trying to say, okay, you know what? They are weighing their options. If we can get him to be assessed again, and we can actually use our own mental health workers, and they say he has lost capacity since he left the embassy, then we can still go back and say he's under Section 3, so he should be put back in the hospital because he's under Section 3. Then they can still go ahead with their plans and do whatever they wanted to do. Yeah, because their plan was stick him somewhere until he's 18 and then get him deported without going to school, without doing anything else. But then by that time, there would be no way for him, no means for him to claim compensation. Or the other way is to try to see if they can justify having jurisdiction and then look for a way of, maybe what they're moving towards is to say, you know what, if you want to have him, because there was a rumor that we have to be deported or something like that, that maybe we should arrive at some form of arrangement between the governments that they say, okay, you can be deported, free passage to Zimbabwe on condition that everything to do with the UK is closed. So he is not entitled to any compensation, even if we know he is entitled to because he got injured here. So yeah, it's I don't know. It smells like, I don't know, it's rotten.
But let's just go back to jurisdiction, because you've both been told that in order to establish whether there is jurisdiction, that you should both give oral evidence to the judge. Have either of you?
No. That's not correct.
Okay.
I will tell you why. Because when the meeting took place on Friday, right, where I suspect they wanted to do the psychiatric assessment without my knowledge, we were told that only my son was supposed to join that meeting. But I raised the question of, we were on Zimbabwean soil. In Zimbabwe, no one would ask a child of his age, considering the complexity of this case, to go and attend such a meeting on his own without a lawyer or a parent with him. That will not happen in Zimbabwe. And why would it happen here when it's happening in the Zimbabwean embassy and I'm here? So when I raised that question, they came back and said, okay, fine, then the two of you can attend. But then we never attended. We don't know what happened, but he ended up being not attending. And that's when they came now and said, oh, there was supposed to be an assessment done. In fact, they were not told it was an assessment. They told they said the mental health worker and the social worker were coming to interview. They are taking advantage of the fact that the team that's handling it at the Zimbabwean embassy do not have the legal background or knowledge of what they mean when a mental health worker comes to talk to a child. So you're saying now I've been asked to give oral evidence. No, it's only my son who has been asked to give oral evidence.
No, I think
what I had heard was that maybe there was possibility that I could be charged with international child abduction.
Oh, Celio, I think you misunderstand what I was saying. What I was trying to say was that when they had the hearing on the 15th of March, jurisdiction,
okay.
Yeah. Were either you or Manashi given the opportunity to give oral evidence about jurisdiction, which is normal in this situation?
Okay, at that time my son was still in the mental health hospital. That's the time when he had given me instructions with his cousin, okay? And we had submitted a statement for him, his first statement. They had also declared at that time that he had mental health capacity. He actually called the court and said, I want to be part of these proceedings. I want to give oral evidence even from the hospital. I remember you did that, right? You did, yeah. But they said they did not respond. So he was not given the opportunity to actually participate.
Did you also say that you wanted to give evidence re-jurisdiction too?
Yes, I wanted to. But what happened is, prior to that, on the 9th, without my knowledge, my league solicitor at the time had a hearing. I had submitted a C2 application, which was supposed to be heard on the 9th, to have my son discharged, right? And I had also said they should set aside an application which had been submitted by his solicitor, that I should have no access to all court documents and all his medical and police records. So my understanding was on the 9th, they should have discussed my C2 application. But what happened, because I was not there, they went and discussed instead the document restriction order. I was after that, it was approved by the judge, but I was not informed by my team. on Friday, they were trying to get me to go to their offices, my solicitors, so that I could review some of the documents that they had, including my son's medical records, but they did from the hospital. But they did not tell me why they were trying to get me to the hospital. I did not manage to their offices. I did not manage to go there, because instead I went to my son to see my son. Okay. Then the following Monday, on the 14th, the judge was supposed to be reviewing the documents before embarking on a 6-day hearing regarding my son. It was supposed to be the final hearing. So it was only on Tuesday, the 15th, that my solicitor then wrote me and said, I was on my way to see my son because he had said he really wanted to see me before I went to court. So when I was driving there, my solicitor sent me an email or contacted me. That's when he said, oh, by the way, there's a document restriction order. Because I'd been asking all along, how come I don't have a single statement from all the parties? I don't even know which statements you have prepared for yourself, for me to present to court for this 6-7-day hearing. It's only then when it became clear to me that there had been a document restriction order that had been passed on the 9th, and based on that, and court injunction, I think, had been issued to my lawyer that if they give me any of the court documents, they will be imprisoned and arrested and imprisoned. If I got access to any of the documents, I would be arrested and imprisoned. So basically, I expressed the wish to participate, but how could I participate when I had no knowledge of one single document that was going to be discussed in court?
Okay. Is Manasseh still there?
Oh, he just stepped out. He's coming back.
Okay. Because I'd like to ask him what message he wants to give to the Zimbabwean government at this time.
Yeah, I'm sure he would more or less repeat what we have just said, that the focus should not be on whether he should be assessed or not, because we already have similar institutions in Zimbabwe. We have also medical practitioners who are just as good as the ones in the UK. We already have a doctor lined up who has already submitted his own statement to the courts and to the government of Zimbabwe to say, okay, he can take over from where the medical team in the UK will have left as far as his treatment is concerned. In the first place, he disputes the fact that he needs all those injections that they've been trying to give him, because he feels that it's something that he doesn't really deserve. So, but yes, the message would be the same, I guess.
But the key message you want to give to the government is about jurisdiction, isn't it?
Yes.
Can Manasseh give us a message? Or?
I think he just went out. I think it's too much for him, to be honest with you. The pressure is just mounting on him, right? He has been saying today, I'm tired, sick and tired of sitting here. He wants to be out. He doesn't understand why he's being held captive here. I think I'm being placed in a very difficult situation where I'm facing my son, right? He was in a hospital where he did not deserve to be. For those who do not understand, it's the hospital where they transferred him to. I think people have to understand. It's a hospital that is maximum security. It used to be a maximum security prison for murderers and people who committed serious offenses. It's somewhere in the bush, on a farm. He had no access to internet, phone, emails, nothing. No games, nothing. So it's like mental torture, basically, right? And he was there for 6 weeks. And the only reason why he was placed there was because he went on a hunger strike. So he was not a risk to anyone or to himself. He just stopped eating because he couldn't bear it anymore in care, and they were not listening to him, and all he wanted was to be out of it. So he was happy when he escaped on the 5th. Now we are approaching 2 weeks, and he's asking himself, why am I still being held here? I'm still being confined to the embassy building. I can't even go out. I can't enjoy anything. All I want is to be with my family. I want to be with my friends. I want to be able to go out and do the things that a normal child would do. What is it that I've done to deserve what I'm going through? And this is a question that he's asking me every day. And I see how they are. I think they're trying to break him. They're trying to break me, right? With keeping us here longer than necessary. I can understand when he walks away because it's like giving up. He's asking himself, why do I have to go through this?
Yeah, but last September, your son was showing the world really that he had symptoms of PTSD, and one of the characteristics of PTSD is avoidance. But as his symptoms were not treated, he was then, from what he's been saying, manipulated by those that were closest to him. Is that correct?
Yes.
And the manipulation was to get him to get him not to go to Zimbabwe, but to go to Canada or Newcastle to avoid any compensation claims against the London Borough Sun. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. So he has stated it in his statement. He has made it very clear, that they kept on promising him, you'll go to Canada, and everything, they were dangling a carrot at him. But he realized that, he said they never represented his wishes and interests. They had their own agenda. And when he realized that that's what they were after, he said, no, I can't continue to live like this. Because when he realized that all they wanted was for him to go and live in a shelter for homeless people in Canada, right? Or to go and live in Newcastle on his own, isolated from the rest of the world. That's when he realized these people did not have his interests at heart. And he's disappointed, he's broken, because he's saying they've wasted my year, right? Lying to me. And now I'm saying I've realized really what was going on. All I want is to go home and live quietly with my family and get on with my life.
And I'm sure that the meeting that was held at the embassy on Friday, there was no mention of the fact that Menashe is entitled to significant compensation from the Criminal Injuries Compensation Authority.
No, and what we have realized is because his solicitor withheld most of the documents away from him, including also the statements that he wrote on his behalf. When you go through the statements that the solicitor has actually submitted on his behalf, you will notice that he must have been working together with social services to cover up, because it was almost like making sure that, like, he is admitting he is at fault. He is the one who is a problem. He is the one who is leading a high-risk life. He is the one who is exposing himself. And we have now that I'm talking to him, I've realized that a lot of the things that they were saying were actually not true. Like they went and said he took 30 pounds worth of cocaine a few days before he was admitted in hospital. He was shocked. And he says, if on one hand they are saying I barricaded myself for 7 to 8 days, right, before they called in the police, how then could I have accessed 30 pounds worth of cocaine within a few days of being admitted? It's not making sense. So it's like they were making up stories. I don't know.
But the bottom line is that if both, you on the 15th of March, you did what any mother would do, and you went to the Hunter Combe Hospital near Norwich to give your son the support that he was craving.
Yeah.
And on that afternoon, the judge decided on jurisdiction without either of you giving oral evidence via the telephone or any other means to the judge. And if you'd been allowed that day, both of you, to give oral evidence to the judge about jurisdiction, what would the judge have found?
We would not be sitting here right now, because the judge would have found out that he had no jurisdiction, that the UK had no jurisdiction. But this was purposely done because this is what has been happening all the time. That's what I'm trying to explain. That it has been covering up after covering up. That's why he was in that hospital, where they said the reason why he was in that hospital was because he had suffered emotional abuse while he was growing up with the mother. That's the background that he'd been given. Instead of saying he had been exposed to abuse while in care, he had been attacked, there was no mention of that. So the judge knew I had gone to the hospital. It's not that he did not know. He knew I had gone to the hospital. This hospital is about 4 hours, going there 4 hours back because of traffic. There was no way I could still go back to the court.
So would you say that the London Borough of Sutton are trying to cover up a scandal?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah. So that's why they're trying to keep him here. It's not because they love my son. They're trying to cover up for the scandals.
And do you think that's what the meeting was about on Friday at the embassy?
Remember, they are not giving the embassy the background. So the Zimbabwean government is not being given this background.
Mm-hmm. So they were hoping, basically, at the meeting on Friday, to persuade the Zimbabwe government to help them cover up their scandal.
Exactly. Because if the Zimbabwean government can give in to their demands and allow them to go and assess the child on Zimbabwean soil, which is unheard of, then they will say, oh, he has got mental health issues. Okay, so all the other statements that he submitted, right, would be null and void. Then they will say, he's saying, okay, they have no jurisdiction because A, B, C, D, but that's not true because the child actually has no mental health capacity. So that's why my son was saying, if push comes to push, why don't I talk to the judge first? You have the video conference, okay? Mm-hmm. After this interview or video conference, that's when we can still debate about whether I need a mental health assessment or not, because I would have made it clear to the judge that the judge has no jurisdiction. And not the other way around, where the judge is going to get a doctored report of his mental capacity before he meets with my son.
Yeah, it sounds a bit as if the authorities over here think Zimbabwe is still a colony when it isn't.
Yeah, I think that's where the problem is.
Yeah. Does Manasseh want to say anything? Have you got any message, Manasseh, that you want to give to the Zimbabwe government?
Not at this time, no.
Okay. I think we're at an end, really, aren't we?
Okay, so what we'll just do is we are hoping that I don't know what we should say now, because we just want to be out of this place. It's unbearable, because like now, Monday is a public holiday because that's Zimbabwe Independence Day. So basically we are going to be locked up here for 3 days doing nothing when we could have been at home with the rest of the family. Maybe the other thing is school is starting beginning of May, first week of May in Zimbabwe. We had hoped that by that time he would have settled down, okay, ready for whatever it is. But as long as we are here, it means he already missed the first term of the academic year in Zimbabwe. And we are hoping that he could at least join the second academic term. But at the rate at which we are going, we don't know. And we actually don't know what the UK is trying to achieve, because they are not putting him in any school here. They've never done that since he came here. So what's the purpose of holding him? I think that's the message that we want to send. They are crying out loud for jurisdiction for my son, but what are the benefits that they are putting on the table for my son? What have they done for him since he has been here? Why don't they just let go of my son? We get on with our lives, and I can help him to pick up his life from where we left.
But what's interesting is that you haven't got very good facilities in the embassy, and yet Manasseh prefers being in the embassy in a very small, confined space with very little facilities to being in the care of the London Borough of Sutton.
Yeah, if you ask him what he said, if he had to go back, if he had the choice of going back to the hospital, what did you say? You would rather stay here even if it means you do online schooling, right?
Yeah.
He says, even if I have to do online schooling and 18 here, I would rather stay here than go back to the hospital or in care. That's how bad it is.
What sort of facilities have you got there? Not very good, huh?
Yeah, you know what? You have to understand. It's abnormal that we are here, right?
Mm.
So the embassy is not going to be, I mean, to look for a quick fix solution just because two people who are actually not supposed to be here all of a sudden there. You understand? So we are making do with what we have. We've got one room that we share as a bedroom, and when they're around, we try to use their facilities for the kitchen and whatever. But because of their security, obviously they have to lock up a lot of the places. So they don't have a particular apartment or block that has been sectioned off for people like us to live. When they normally there are no refugees in London, so this is an abnormal situation. So they are doing whatever they can, but I'm sure they would also want to see us at home now because it's causing inconvenience to everybody. Because like now, these 3 days, everybody is going to be running around and trying to see how they can bring us food.
Thank you both. You've both been very informative and very helpful. And I think that the Zimbabwe government needs to focus on jurisdiction.
Definitely, yeah. And they should not allow themselves to be bullied by the UK. They have the jurisdiction.
I agree.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
One last thing.
She says one last thing.
Okay.
Our funds are running low, so if anyone will be kind enough to make donations, there'll be a link in the description.
Oh yeah, he is right there because we are locked up here, and yeah, it's not easy because we have a lot of expenses now that are accumulating.
Well, as I understand it, somebody is bringing you food into the embassy because you can't afford to buy it. Is that right?
Yeah, that as well. But if you look at it for one full year, I've basically been up and down the UK. Initially, they told me either legal aid or the London Borough of Sutton was going to cover my costs for flying in, hotel, contact with him, appearing in court, and all that. I submitted my expenses. I did not get even 1 cent refunded, not even £1. And I've not been able to really consistently maintain a project or anything to be able to raise sufficient funds to be able to finance all this. And he's now going to be going back to Zimbabwe. He might need a second operation because of the hand that they did not attend to properly, the one where he was stabbed and attacked. He's going to be going back to school. That will need money. He will need psychological support. He will need all that. So it's expenses that are going to be accumulating. So I understand family and friends are trying to do some fundraising. I think they've done something on World Remit and on GoFundMe, something like that.
So basically, because of the stress and the pressure of the situation around your son, you haven't been able to work to support yourself.
Yeah, I really have been, because normally I'm maybe those who don't know my background, and I'm saying I'm highly educated person. I've got a PhD in industrial engineering, MBA. I'm certified internationally as a business analyst and project manager. But the thing is, because of the up and down that I've had to do, I've had to make sacrifices in order to be there for my son. So it will take a while before I get back again to where I was before.
You've done what any good mother would do. Prioritize your child above all other things. Yeah?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.